Hello folks, and welcome back to the Attack of Opportunity. Kevin here, with a little something from Guild Wars 2. Now, this is something I've been playing for quite a while. I never actually got around to recording it for you all. Mostly because, well, I was still trying to get a feel for it, whatever. This is one of the first games where I actually managed to make myself a max level character and make it through most of the endgame content to the point where I feel I can actually give you guys a better look at some of the later features in the game as well. But the reason I start here is what you see here is, if the music isn't a little much of a tip, Arenanet decided that for April Fool's Day they wanted to give a little taste of retro gaming at its finest to their players. And the result was a little something we call Supah Adventure Box, which you see before you today. Probably one of the most ridiculously nasty dungeons I have ever run. And yet I can't get enough of it. And the difficulty here isn't so much from the dungeon itself. I mean, you can solo most of these fights on your own. And yet, parts of it you just... You'll see why in a second. But one of my favorite parts of this game, right here, is that Arenanet does take some really great ideas and present them to the community as a whole. Here you just see like this lovingly rendered product, which was released more than likely as just a celebration of video games as a whole. Why we play, and what drew us to the medium in the first place. Now the whole point here, it might look really easy for the time being. That's because, quite frankly, I've run this part of the dungeon so many times it's like second nature to me. But later levels, this really does start getting nastier. In fact, it's going to start doing that very shortly. This is, quite frankly, one of the easiest parts of this dungeon right here. But and I call it a dungeon. It's really more like a game within a game. This isn't typical dungeon running for Guild Wars, which was another part of the charm of this setup. This was something different. This was something new. And it was well received by the community. Everyone seemed to love this event when it started. So I figured I wanted to get some footage of it here for you. The whole concept here, basically, you are heroes trying to rescue a princess from an evil overlord. Zone 1 begins your search for said princess. And that is what you see here. You'll see these little blue and green balls floating about. These are things called baubles, which the character can actually use as currency in-game to buy upgrades, weapons. You see a little bar at the bottom with like a candle and a stick on it. That's my primary abilities bar for this whole game, mostly. I'm hitting enemies with a stick to kill them, and using candle to burn through flowers and plants. It's silly, but it's so much fun. And destructible walls like this, you need a bomb to break through. Kind of a callback to the old Zelda games. I've never been able to afford the bomb yet, but mostly, you know, I never really got into this. But yeah. I mean, for those of you that have wanted to try this game out, it's an excellent game. But it's little things like this that really make me glad that it's still out there. Ow! Jesus. But yeah. The whole point of this little dungeon, though, quite frankly, like 8-bit games of old, and the art style does definitely reflect that. Your final objective is to reach the end of the stage and defeat whatever end boss or objective sits in your way. You are given, instead of traditional combat like you normally get in this game, you get 3 or 4 hits and your character loses a life. Lives can be bought using baubles that are collected throughout the adventure, as well as continue coins, which allow you to pick up where your adventure left off should you fall in combat. Now I'll show you guys. I'll definitely be showing you guys some of that later, because it is next to impossible to finish this dungeon without dying at least once. But sorry, I'm trying to actually remember how I'm supposed to get out of this part because it's been a while. I have not actually successfully finished this one since the night it came out, and that was April 1st. So, pardon me if I'm a little rusty. Okay, there's my checkpoint. And our first major boss encounter for this dungeon is right on up here. Basically, the whole point of this encounter here: avoid the little lasers fired by the giant floating head, and free the blacksmith in the cage. Not an easy feat, as I more or less just demonstrated. Now there are some who have been very successful in this dungeon. I've talked to a few that have been able to solo some of these encounters. I have not been so fortunate. Primarily because of these little buggers. Killing enemies in the dungeon will actually have a chance of giving your characters nice health power-ups, but sadly I've never been able to find anything quite so lucky. Mostly just because I tend to avoid some of the enemies. I just find fighting them kind of pointless, except for, encounters like this one. Another quick word of advice: anyone looking to really get into this and try this dungeon for themselves, the first thing I will tell you, set some time aside. These are long runs. We're talking a minimum of at least an hour to get you through. And that's with someone that knows the jumping puzzles and can successfully navigate those. If you actually look to be learning the fights and fighting your way through, your first time through, you're probably going to want to try the built-in infantile mode to get a feel for some of the boss fights, which basically helps you through some of the jumping puzzles and helps you ease your way into the dungeon. If you want to jump in straight for the challenge, by all means, normal mode is quite accessible as well. In fact, that is what I'm playing on now. Infantile mode basically takes out the majority of the jumping puzzles in favor of just straight combat, and for some players that is perfectly reasonable. Combat in this game is ridiculously difficult, but yeah, that right there is the end of the first level in Zone 1. There are 3 zones in total, and each one is increasingly difficult. I will admit that I've never actually successfily completed this whole thing on my own. I actually had to have some friends help me through the later parts of this. I'm trying to think. Yeah. This is a dungeon technically recommended for 5 people. It can be soloed, but it is a lot more fun to do with friends and a lot less frustrating. Not to say, you know, the challenge isn't there, but who knows, right? And, oh, the music. Like, the music and the art style are really what sets this entire event apart. It was something new, it was something unique, and it's things like this that really make this game shine. For those of you who have been hearing people say, you know, the game there's no end game, there's none of this, there's none of that. The problem there is that a lot of the charms of Guild Wars 2 and, you know, most of Arenanet's games is that it's something you really do need to experience for yourself. Most of what drew me to this game was the heavy role-playing community on the Tarnished Coast server, if you're in North America, as well as, I forget the name of it, but there's another European server if you are outside of the States that is very heavy in role-playing as well. There are several websites and resources for those of you interested in role-playing through games such as this, as well as a couple of other plenty of role-playing guilds. I happen to be a member of one of those. As a matter of fact, I may have mentioned them in the past in some of my other videos, perhaps. Let's see. Yeah, this really is not one of the easiest runs I've made. Last time I ran this one, I just got utterly destroyed. But then again, this is my first time actually attempting the jumping puzzle parts of it on my own. My last run I did on Infantile, and it was just... It felt kind of cheap, actually. I mean, I'm not gonna tell you, you know, you can't run it on Infantile because it lessens the experience for you. Not at all. The jumping puzzles in this game are fucking ridiculous. But that's also part of the fun of the challenge. There are some challenging parts of this. And to me, that's what sets this game apart. It's not afraid to... It doesn't pull any punches. It's not afraid to outright kick your bloody ass into the dirt. And yet, it still seems mostly fair in some aspects. Now, there are some dungeons in this game that just, if you're not prepared for them, are just bloody unfair. But this one, every encounter, every death, every fight seems balanced and fun. And you'll see more of the boss fights and such later. That first one was just a small taste of that. There is another nastier one coming up later that I'll show you guys. But there's a couple of fun little mini games through here. But first things first. This monkey needs to die. Key. Ooh, that's important. As you run through the dungeon here, occasionally you'll find a key which will unlock a chest hidden in each of these little zones. For those of you that want to search it out, find all the different locations and things, those will be there for you. Also of note, dying does reset any items you carry with you. So if you were carrying a key or something and when you died, probably going to have to find that again. So, let me adjust my camera angle here. There we go. Now, I probably don't have to go up into the tree line like I was. There's probably another way out. But there are some fun things to find up there. And part of this game is all about exploring. Got a little tongue-tied. All about exploration. This whole game is about exploring and discovering new things. If you're expecting, you know, just a good dungeon crawl and game, just like WoW, you're probably going to be sorely disappointed. If you're looking for a game with a good community and a lot of potential, you'll find plenty of that here, depending on how you decide to look at it. There is a great community of role players, and just generally a good time to be had if you're looking for a specific type of game. If you're looking for something a little bit more about the world as a whole, and less about just the typical dungeon grind and raid content that most games are notorious for nowadays, you're going to be sorely disappointed. If you're just looking for something with a great world, a wonderful art style, and a great new take on the concept of the MMO as a whole, definitely worth taking a look at. And then they throw you things like this. Every now and again, they'll have a special dungeon event, which more or less showcases some of the more creative aspects of the game. Supah Adventure Box is just one of many events that they have produced. There was another involving a certain toy maker who enlisted the help of adventurers to help him gain control of his workshop after, all of his toys went rogue and things of that nature. And oh wow, that is game over. I actually don't have any continued coins, and I don't have enough baubles to continue. So, that was just a quick look at Supah Adventure Box. I can assure you it's not always quite so bad, but it's not meant to be soloed. I should not have been running that alone. I just really wanted to get the footage for you guys, let you guys take a look at it. Thank you again for tuning in. This is Kevin with the Attack of Opportunity. I'll be back with more videos for you as soon as I have some ideas, as soon as I have everything ready. Thank you again for coming on through. And I'll see you guys on the next Attack of Opportunity. Till then.